In this video, I'll discuss the anger mountain model. What I particularly like about the model is that it explains what happens neurologically, physiologically, and emotionally when we're triggered. So I'll begin with an example from my life. Even as I prepare to tell you this story, I notice my heart is racing, my blood pressure is elevated, my speech and breathing are a bit quicker than normal, and I'm feeling flushed. I'm also, a bit embarrassed and nervous. In fact, although I'm only retelling the story from memory, my body and brain are re-experiencing the sensations and emotions as I prepare to share it with you. As you can see from the model, the ascent up Anger Mountain always begins with a trigger. In February 2 years ago, I purchased a home in New West. The timeline from purchase to possession was 12 days. Since my home is near Royal Columbian, homeowners need a street parking pass. February, a historically busy month in my work life, left me with exactly 60 minutes to sign the documents at the lawyer's office, register my deed with the municipal tax office, and get a parking pass from City Hall. I arrived at the law office only to find that my documents weren't ready. I'd called in advance and was assured I just needed to pick them up in reception. Disorganization is a trigger of mine. I moved into escalation phase. I knew this because I noticed that my breathing and heart rate had increased. So I began to take deep breaths, making sure the oxygen would move me out of fight, flight, and freeze and reactivate my logical executive brain function. I really can't stop my triggers. They're automatic. However, being aware of my triggers and my physiological responses, such as increased heart rate and breathing, can help me activate my neocortex, the part of my brain that controls planning, logic, and rational behavior, so that I can avoid crisis mode. With 5 minutes to spare, I got to the parking department where the 2 women behind the counter failed to even acknowledge me because they were talking about weekend plans. Being ignored or disrespected is a really big trigger of mine. I noticed my rapid heart rate and breath. Without regulating my breath, I noticed I was moving into escalation. After 3 minutes, yes, I was watching the clock and getting angrier by the second, I found myself in crisis. One of the women turned to me and asked what I needed. I explained that I want a parking pass. She tells me my car insurance needs to have my new address. I explained that I was told by my insurer that until I move into my new house, I can't change my address on my insurance. I offer her the deed to my house as proof that I'm moving into my new home. She tells me that it's her policy and that she can't help me and issue a parking pass. One of my biggest triggers is now activated. Bureaucracy. I'm in crisis. I no longer have control over myself. I'm unable to think logically. I'm in full fight mode. I actually say, I'm wondering if I might speak to your supervisor. You see, I'd like to volunteer my time and expertise to do a workshop with you and your team, explaining why you never tell a client that it's our policy when they are clearly upset. I was so frustrated, I wanted to cry. I wanted people to be reasonable. In truth, this wasn't the parking department or their response to me. It was my triggers and my inability to be aware of and manage my own reactions. If you take a look at the model, you'll see that my quality of judgment is reduced the higher up the mountain I go. Crisis mode is linked to what is often called the stupid zone. As cortisol and adrenaline are released, I go into autopilot. I am no longer in control. My survival brain of fight, flight, and freeze is activated. In this case, I fight. What's alarming is that some of us live in this heightened state and don't even realize we are in a constant state of stress, which has serious implications on our health and well-being. It took me half an hour to return to normal. According to the model, moving from crisis to recovery can take between 20 and 40 minutes. Then, once the adrenaline and cortisol are cleared from my body, I went into a depression. In my case, I'm sitting in my car feeling terrible about the condescending way I acted and spoke. I'm embarrassed. Nothing I did or said to those ladies aligns with my values or the way I want to show up in the world. As I think about my story, I reflect on how I could have avoided heading right up to crisis. First, my triggers are disorganization, incompetence, being disrespected, being ignored, bureaucracy, irrational, illogical, one-size-fits-all thinking, not enough time. I could go on. Knowing my triggers and having a plan to keep myself between trigger and escalation is my responsibility. Breathing is one action that works well for me. Another is removing me from the situation. It's not that we do this perfectly. It's a practice. We learn and grow our awareness muscle the more we use it. Now, as you think about this model, consider how self-awareness might help you navigate to avoid crisis at the top of Anger Mountain. What triggers you? What physiological responses do you have in reaction to your trigger? What are some actions that you have to avoid crisis mode?